They said I was obsolete, a relic from the days when code was crafted, not copy-pasted. When I walked out of Nexus Technologies after building their entire infrastructure from scratch, I left them a simple message. Good luck keeping the lights on. What they didn't know was that I had embedded something deep in the heart of their $40 million system, something that would remind them exactly why they needed me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it really started. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The server room hummed with the quiet efficiency of a system that never slept. Rack after rack of blinking lights stretched into the dimly lit distance, each one a heartbeat in the digital organism I had spent 12 years nurturing into existence. At 3 a.m., when most of the world was dreaming, I was here, monitoring, adjusting, perfecting. This wasn't just a job for me. This was my creation. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I built Nexus Technologies' entire digital infrastructure from the ground up. Back in 2011, when Marcus Fitzgerald first hired me, the company was running on outdated servers that crashed every other Tuesday. Their idea of data backup was burning files onto CDs and storing them in a filing cabinet. I was fresh out of MIT with a master's in computer science and enough caffeine in my bloodstream to power a small city. Marcus believed in me when nobody else would. While other companies were hiring teams of consultants and throwing money at problems, he gave me a budget, a basement full of empty server racks, and one simple instruction: make it bulletproof. So I did. I didn't just install systems. I designed them. Every line of code, every security protocol, every redundancy measure was crafted with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. I built monitoring systems that could predict failures before they happened. I created automated backup processes that ran so seamlessly, most employees didn't even know they existed. The network architecture I designed could handle traffic spikes that would cripple our competitors. But it wasn't just about the technical aspects. I knew every vendor, every service provider, every hardware manufacturer in the region. When servers needed replacement, I had relationships with suppliers who would prioritize our orders. When critical updates needed to be installed, I had contacts at software companies who would walk me through the process personally. I attended every tech conference, joined every professional association, built a network of trust that extended far beyond our office walls. The system grew with the company. As Nexus expanded from a small startup to a major player in financial data processing, my infrastructure scaled alongside it. We handled transactions for banks, managed sensitive financial records, processed millions of dollars in daily transfers. The system I built wasn't just supporting the company, it was the backbone that made everything possible. By 2018, we were processing over $40 million in daily transactions through the network I had architected. Zero major downtime, zero security breaches, zero data loss incidents, the industry noticed. Trade publications wrote articles about our reliability. Competitors tried to poach me with offers that would have doubled my salary. But I stayed. Nexus was my home, and the system was my life's work. Marcus and I developed a relationship built on mutual respect. He trusted my judgment completely when it came to technical decisions. When budget meetings rolled around, my department requests were approved without question because everyone knew I didn't waste money. When new hires needed training, they came to me because I had written most of the documentation myself. I wasn't just an employee. I was the institutional memory of how everything worked. The other department heads respected me too. Jennifer Walsh from accounting knew that when she needed custom reporting tools, I would build them. David Park from operations understood that his workflow automation requests would be handled personally, not outsourced to some contractor who barely understood the requirements. I had spent years learning their business needs, not just their technical requirements. But everything changed in January 2023 when Marcus announced his semi-retirement. He would stay on as chairman, but day-to-day operations would be handled by someone new, someone younger, someone who could bring fresh energy to the company. That someone was his nephew, Tyler Blackwood. Tyler arrived on a Monday morning in February, stepping out of a silver Tesla wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Harvard MBA, he announced during his first all-hands meeting. Previously worked at a Fortune 500 consulting firm specializing in digital transformation. He spoke in buzzwords: synergistic optimization, cloud-first methodologies, agile implementation frameworks. The kind of language that sounded impressive but meant nothing. His first week, he scheduled one-on-one meetings with every department head. When my turn came, he walked into my office carrying a tablet and an expression that suggested he was about to solve problems I didn't even know I had. "Sarah," he began, settling into the chair across from my desk without being invited. "I've been reviewing our IT infrastructure costs, and I have to say, I'm concerned about efficiency." I leaned back, curious where this was heading. "What kind of efficiency concerns?" "Well, for starters, why are we maintaining our own servers? Most companies our size have moved to cloud solutions. Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure. Scalable, cost-effective, modern. I explained the security requirements of financial data processing, the regulatory compliance issues, the customization we had built over years to optimize for our specific workflows. He nodded along, but I could tell he wasn't really listening. "Also," he continued, glancing at his tablet, "your team seems pretty small for a company this size. Most organizations have entire IT departments. You're essentially running this as a one-person operation." "Because the systems are stable," I replied. "They don't need constant maintenance because they were built right the first time." Tyler smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "But what happens if something happens to you?" "That's a lot of institutional knowledge in one person. We need to think about redundancy, documentation, scalability." Over the following weeks, Tyler began bringing in consultants. Young, energetic people with expensive laptops and cloud-based solutions for everything. They conducted assessments, analyzed our architecture, prepared reports filled with recommendations that fundamentally misunderstood how our systems worked. The consultants were led by Madison Chen, a sharp-dressed woman about my age who spoke with the confidence of someone who had never seen a system she couldn't modernize. She had impressive credentials: Stanford Computer Science, previous experience with major tech companies, certifications in every cloud platform that existed. Madison started scheduling regular meetings, supposedly to learn from my expertise, while conducting their assessment. But her questions revealed the gaps in her understanding. She focused on technology trends rather than business requirements. She talked about containerization and microservices without understanding why our monolithic architecture was actually more stable for our use case. She suggested moving sensitive financial data to third-party cloud providers without fully grasping the regulatory implications. "The problem with legacy systems," she explained during one meeting, "is that they create single points of failure. What you've built here is impressive for its time, but it's not sustainable in today's environment." I tried to explain the years of refinement, the custom optimizations, the relationships with vendors that ensured immediate support when needed. But Madison had already made up her mind. In her world, newer was automatically better, and custom solutions were problems to be solved rather than competitive advantages to be preserved. Tyler began inviting Madison to senior leadership meetings. Suddenly, she was presenting recommendations about my department to executives who had trusted my judgment for over a decade. Her presentations were polished, full of charts and industry benchmarks that painted our current infrastructure as outdated and risky. "We need to modernize," became Tyler's favorite phrase. It appeared in every email, every meeting, every conversation about the future of the company. And modernization, according to Tyler and Madison, meant replacing everything I had built with off-the-shelf solutions managed by their consulting firm. The writing was on the wall, but I continued doing what I had always done. Monitoring the systems, ensuring uptime, maintaining the infrastructure that kept Nexus running. Because regardless of what Tyler and Madison thought about the future, the present still required someone who actually understood how everything worked. But late at night, when I was alone in the server room listening to the familiar hum of machines I had chosen and configured myself, I began to realize that my days at Nexus were numbered. Tyler wasn't just planning to modernize the infrastructure. He was planning to eliminate the need for me entirely. What he didn't understand was that some things can't be replaced with consulting reports and cloud services. Some things require the deep knowledge that comes from building something yourself, caring for it, and understanding not just how it works, but why it was built that way in the first place. The real challenge was about to begin. The first sign of trouble came disguised as a routine security audit. Madison arrived Monday morning with a team of junior consultants, each carrying identical laptops and the kind of eager expressions that come with being fresh out of college. Tyler announced it during our weekly staff meeting as a standard best practices review, but I knew better. We're conducting a comprehensive assessment of all current systems, Madison explained, her voice carrying that practiced authority consultant's perfect. Nothing disruptive, just documenting processes and identifying optimization opportunities. What followed was 3 weeks of intrusion masked as collaboration. Madison's team scheduled interviews with every employee who touched our systems, asking detailed questions about workflows, access procedures, and system dependencies. They requested documentation I had written years ago, network diagrams I had never shared outside the IT department, and administrative passwords for security verification purposes. I cooperated, but carefully. I provided the documentation they requested, but kept the most critical system details to myself. When they asked about certain back-end processes, I gave them functional overviews without revealing the underlying architecture that made everything work. Call it professional caution, but something about their approach felt less like an audit and more like reconnaissance. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Madison had a talent for making her presence felt everywhere. She would appear in the break room when employees were discussing system issues, always ready with suggestions about industry-standard solutions. She scheduled coffee meetings with department heads, building relationships while subtly undermining confidence in our current setup. Her message was always the same. What we had was impressive for its time, but the future required different thinking. The real manipulation started with small incidents. Database queries that normally ran in seconds began taking minutes. Network connections that had been rock solid for years started experiencing intermittent hiccups. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that would bring the system down, but enough to create frustration and raise questions about reliability. At first, I assumed it was normal fluctuation. Even the best systems have occasional anomalies. But the pattern was wrong. These weren't random failures or predictable degradation. They were targeted disruptions affecting specific processes that Madison's team had been studying. When I investigated, I found traces of unauthorized access attempts, probing queries, testing system responses, and configuration changes that had been reverted before anyone noticed. Someone was deliberately introducing problems to make our infrastructure look unstable. Brought my concerns to Marcus, but he was already halfway out the door. His focus had shifted to golf tournaments and board meetings at other companies. When I explained what I suspected, he listened politely but deferred to Tyler's judgment. "I'm sure it's nothing malicious," Marcus said, adjusting his reading glasses as he reviewed a report Madison had prepared. "Tyler says they're just conducting standard diagnostics. Maybe the system is showing its age." Tyler, meanwhile, was building his case methodically. Every minor hiccup got documented in incident reports. every temporary slowdown became evidence of systemic instability. Madison provided the technical credibility, framing each issue as symptomatic of deeper architectural problems that could only be solved through comprehensive modernization. The breakthrough came when I decided to monitor our systems from outside the normal administrative channels. Using access logs that the consultants didn't know existed, I traced their activities during off hours. What I found was systematic sabotage disguised as system testing. Madison's team had been running stress tests designed to overload specific components, creating the very problems they were documenting as evidence of system failure. But proving it was another matter entirely. By the time I identified the pattern, they had covered their tracks. The access logs showed legitimate diagnostic activities. The stress tests could be explained as standard performance evaluation. Any accusations I made would sound like paranoid deflection from someone resistant to change. The campaign against me became more personal. Madison started questioning my methodologies in meetings, suggesting that my attachment to the current systems was preventing objective evaluation. She raised concerns about documentation gaps, single points of failure, and the risks of relying on tribal knowledge instead of standardized processes. Tyler amplified every criticism. During department head meetings, he would reference conversations with Madison about concerning discoveries in the IT assessment. He spoke about the need for fresh perspectives and unbiased evaluation of our technology infrastructure. The message was clear. I was too close to the systems to see their flaws. Jennifer Walsh from accounting was the first to crack. After a week of intermittent database connectivity issues that Madison's team had mysteriously identified and temporarily resolved, Jennifer mentioned during a budget meeting that maybe it was time to consider more reliable solutions. "The system crashes are affecting our quarterly reporting," she said, looking apologetically in my direction. "I know Sarah works hard to fix things, but maybe we need something more stable." David Park from operations nodded agreement. "We've been having problems with the workflow automation too. Nothing major, but it's noticeable." I wanted to scream. These weren't system failures. They were manufactured problems designed to erode confidence. But pointing fingers at the consultants would make me look defensive and paranoid. Madison had played this perfectly. The final phase began in late July when Tyler announced a strategic technology planning session. Madison presented a comprehensive proposal for migrating our entire infrastructure to a cloud-based solution managed by her consulting firm. The presentation was masterful, professional slides, detailed timelines, cost projections that showed long-term savings. "The current system has served its purpose," Tyler explained to the assembled executives, "but it's become a liability. Single points of failure, outdated security protocols, scaling limitations. We need to move forward." Marcus, who had once trusted my judgment completely, sat quietly through the entire presentation. When Madison finished, he turned to me with a question that felt like a betrayal. "Sarah, what are your thoughts on this proposal?" I had prepared for this moment, but it still felt surreal. "The proposal addresses problems that don't actually exist," I said calmly. "Our systems are stable, secure, and optimized for our specific needs. Migration would introduce risks that far outweigh any theoretical benefits." Madison smiled sympathetically. "I understand the attachment to existing systems, but the data speaks for itself. The incident reports over the past few months show clear patterns of instability. Incident reports based on problems that started appearing exactly when your assessment began," I replied. The room went quiet. Tyler's expression hardened. "Are you suggesting that Madison's team caused these issues?" It was a trap, and I knew it. Accusing the consultants of sabotage would make me look desperate and unprofessional, but staying silent would be interpreted as acceptance of their narrative. "I'm suggesting that correlation isn't causation," I said carefully. "These systems have run flawlessly for 12 years. The timing of these problems is suspicious." Tyler exchanged a look with Madison. "I think we need to have a private conversation," he said. The meeting ended, and I knew my time was up. The confrontation came 2 days later. Tyler called me into Marcus's office on a Friday afternoon. Marcus wasn't there, just Tyler and Madison, sitting across from each other like judges at a tribunal. "Sarah," Tyler began, his voice carrying false sympathy, "we've decided to move forward with the modernization project. Your position will no longer be necessary after the transition." I had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. "When?" "Effective immediately. Madison's team will handle the technical transition. We'll provide a severance package, of course." Madison leaned forward slightly. "We really appreciate everything you've built here. It's impressive work. But sometimes organizations need to evolve beyond their founder's vision." I stood up slowly, gathering the few personal items from my desk. 12 years of work, reduced to a cardboard box and a severance agreement. Tyler watched me pack, probably expecting anger or pleading. Instead, I remained calm. "You'll need the administrative passwords," I said, writing them on a piece of paper. "The documentation is in the shared drive. Emergency contacts for vendors are in the phone list." Tyler took the paper, looking almost disappointed by my professionalism. "Thank you for making this transition smooth." I walked to the door, then paused. Without turning around, I spoke quietly but clearly. "Good luck keeping the lights on." Madison laughed nervously. "I'm sure we'll manage." I smiled, but they couldn't see it. "I'm sure you will." By 5 o'clock, my badge had been deactivated and my access revoked. I drove home in silence, already knowing what was coming next. Because what Tyler and Madison didn't understand was that building a system from scratch means knowing every component, every dependency, every subtle interaction that keeps everything running smoothly. And sometimes, when you build something complex enough, you build in safeguards that only you know about. Insurance policies that activate when the original architect is no longer around to maintain the delicate balance. The first problems would appear in exactly 72 hours. Not because I programmed them to, but because that's how long it would take for the automated maintenance routines to realize their creator was gone. I spent the weekend cleaning my home office and updating my resume, but mostly, I waited for my phone to ring. It wouldn't take long. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made me excited to start the week. Instead, I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading technical journals while my phone remained conspicuously silent. 71 hours had passed since I left Nexus Technologies. 1 hour to go. At exactly 8:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. I let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, it rang again. Same number. Then again. The voicemail was frantic. "Sarah, this is Kevin from Network Operations. I know you don't work here anymore, but something's wrong with the backup systems. They're not responding to commands, and Tyler told us to call you. Please call back." I deleted the message and poured another cup of coffee. By 9:30, I had received 11 missed calls and 7 voicemails. The panic was escalating. Backup systems offline. Transaction processing slowing down. Security protocols triggering false alarms. The carefully orchestrated infrastructure I had spent 12 years perfecting was beginning to unravel without its architect. The irony wasn't lost on me. Madison's team had spent months documenting every visible component of our systems, but they had missed the invisible threads that held everything together. The automated maintenance scripts that I had written to run behind the scenes. The custom monitoring tools that prevented small issues from becoming major failures. The intricate dance of processes that kept $40 million in daily transactions flowing smoothly. Most importantly, they had missed the dead man's switch. Every complex system needs fail-safes, and I had built mine carefully. Not malicious. Code designed to destroy. That would have been illegal and unethical. Instead, I had created authentication protocols that required periodic verification from the original architect. Without those check-ins, the system would gradually scale back its operations to protect data integrity. It was elegant, subtle, and completely legal. A safety feature disguised as a time bomb. The calls kept coming. Tyler's voice appeared in voicemail number 15, trying to sound authoritative but failing to hide his desperation. "Sarah, we need to discuss some technical issues. Please call me back at your earliest convenience." I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood instead. By noon, the situation had deteriorated significantly. The local news website reported that Nexus Technologies was experiencing technical difficulties that had temporarily suspended some client services. The stock price dropped 8% in morning trading. Social media buzzed with frustrated customers unable to access their financial data. Madison, it seemed, was discovering the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical experience. Her team could read documentation and run diagnostic tools, but they couldn't intuitively understand how the system was supposed to behave. When alerts started firing, they responded by the book, shutting down processes, restarting services, escalating issues according to their standard procedures. Each action made things worse. The real crisis began Tuesday afternoon when the primary database cluster started rejecting connections. Not crashing. That would have been easier to fix. Instead, it was operating in a protective mode I had programmed years earlier, designed to prevent data corruption when the system detected anomalous behavior. Madison's team, following their cloud migration playbook, had been making configuration changes that triggered the safeguards. From my living room, I monitored the situation through publicly available channels. Financial industry websites reported service disruptions. Regulatory agencies issued queries about compliance violations. Client companies began posting angry messages on social media, demanding answers about missing transaction data. Tyler's voicemails became increasingly desperate. "Sarah, please. We need your help. Whatever it takes, we'll make this right." Wednesday morning brought the knockout punch. The story hit the major financial news outlets. Nexus Technologies in crisis after internal system failures. The article, clearly based on leaked information from inside the company, described a catastrophic modernization attempt that had crippled the firm's ability to process client transactions. The article quoted an unnamed industry expert who perfectly captured the situation. "This appears to be a case of trying to fix something that wasn't broken. Nexus had a reputation for rock-solid reliability. Someone made the decision to replace proven systems with theoretical improvements, and now they're paying the price." I smiled, recognizing Madison's perfectly crafted technical explanations being used against her. The same buzzwords that had impressed Tyler in meetings now sounded hollow when quoted in news articles about system failures. Thursday brought the first sign of capitulation. Marcus called me directly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had watched his life's work crumble in 4 days. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I made a mistake, a big one. Can we talk?" I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory away from the chaos at Nexus. He looked older than I remembered, gray hair disheveled and eyes red-rimmed from stress and sleepless nights. "The board is furious," he began without preamble. "We've lost 3 major clients. The regulatory agencies are threatening investigations. Our insurance company is asking questions about risk management practices." I sipped my latte and waited. "Tyler thought he was doing the right thing," Marcus continued. "He believed the consultants, trusted their assessment. But they don't understand what you built. They can't fix what they broke." "What exactly are you asking me?" Marcus leaned forward, desperation replacing his usual composed demeanor. "Come back. Full autonomy over IT operations, salary increase, equity package, whatever you want. Just please fix this before we lose everything." I had prepared for this conversation, but I still took my time responding. What about Tyler? He's been reassigned to strategic planning. No operational authority. And Madison's team? Terminated this morning. We're paying contract penalties, but they're gone. I nodded slowly. I'll need complete control over the technical recovery. No interference, no second guessing, no committee approvals for emergency measures. Done. And I want a written guarantee that any future technology decisions go through me first. No more surprise modernization projects. Absolutely. I finished my coffee considering the offer. Not because I was unsure, I had already decided, but because Marcus needed to understand the gravity of what had happened. I'll start Monday, I said finally. But understand this. Fixing what's been broken will take months. Some client relationships may never be repaired. And the next time someone suggests that experience is a liability, remember this week. Friday morning, I walked back through the familiar doors of Nexus Technologies. The atmosphere was subdued, employees speaking in hushed tones and avoiding eye contact. The confident energy that had filled the office during Madison's assessment had been replaced by anxiety and uncertainty. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. His office was empty, personal items already removed. Madison's consulting team had vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind only their unused recommendations and the wreckage of their implementation attempts. Kevin, from Network. Operations looked up when I passed his desk, relief flooding his expression. "Thank God you're back," he whispered. "We've been running on emergency protocols for 3 days. Half the monitoring systems are offline." I spent the first day assessing the damage. It was worse than I had expected. In their attempt to modernize, rapidly, Madison's team had made fundamental changes to core system configurations. They had migrated critical processes to cloud services without understanding the dependencies. They had updated software components that had been deliberately kept at specific versions for compatibility reasons. Most critically, they had disabled several of the automated safeguards I had built, interpreting them as legacy code that needed to be removed. The irony was perfect. In trying to eliminate single points of failure, they had created system-wide vulnerabilities that were far more dangerous than anything that had existed before. The recovery process was methodical but painstaking. I had to rebuild trust with vendor partners who had been confused by mixed messages during the transition. I needed to restore client confidence through direct communication and transparent reporting. Most importantly, I had to repair the technical architecture without introducing new risks or disrupting the gradual restoration of services. Within 2 weeks, transaction processing was back to normal levels. Within a month, the last of the emergency protocols had been deactivated. By December, industry publications were running follow-up stories about Nexus's remarkable recovery from near-catastrophic system failures. The board meeting where I presented the recovery report was a subdued affair. Marcus introduced me with genuine gratitude, acknowledging that my return had likely saved the company from bankruptcy. The board members asked thoughtful questions about future resilience and risk management, but nobody mentioned modernization or digital transformation. Tyler attended the meeting but didn't speak. He had learned in the most expensive way possible that experience isn't something you can replace with enthusiasm and consulting reports. That trust isn't built through presentations but through consistent performance over time. That sometimes, the old way of doing things is old because it works, not because it's obsolete. The final vindication came in March when industry analysts released a comprehensive case study about the Nexus incident. It became required reading in business schools as an example of how not to manage technological change. Madison's consulting firm lost several major contracts as clients questioned their methodology and risk assessment capabilities. I kept the news article on my desk, not as a trophy but as a reminder. Technology evolves, but the fundamental principles of building reliable systems remain constant. You need deep understanding, not just surface knowledge. You need respect for complexity, not just confidence in solutions. And you need humility, To recognize that sometimes the biggest risk isn't falling behind. It's moving too fast without understanding where you're going. The server room hummed with the same quiet efficiency it had always maintained. The systems I had built, nearly destroyed and carefully restored, continued their invisible work of processing transactions and protecting data. And late at night, when the office was empty and the building was quiet, I would sometimes walk through those racks of blinking lights and smile. Some things, it turned out, really were irreplaceable. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.